Hello, everybody. My name is Ian Kirkpatrick. I'm an author, idiot, and loin streamer, and today we're going to be doing the best day of the month. It is, in fact, LMIAY time, and I'm sorry for everybody that I'm like a week late on this. And yes, the new LMIAY is up. I just got back from a trip like a week ago, and I was so wiped. Like, I didn't even do anything that was extraneous, and yet I got back and I was just like so tired. But so we're back, hopefully to mostly normal. I mean, we should have a book discussion on Thursday, and I'm already reading the next book, which is by one of you guys. So have that prepared. Prepare your hearts, really. But, before we get started, because, well, I don't even know if I remember how to do this anymore. Number one, if you enjoy what I do here, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Number two, if you would like to be featured on the channel, check out the links down in the description below. The number one way to be featured is through LMIAY, which is what we're doing here today. I give you a prompt, you write a short story using that prompt, and on the first Monday video of the month, we bask in your creativity. This is still the first Monday video of the month. It's just a week late. The second way to be featured is if you are an indie author and you have a book out or a book that is coming out. If you submit the first chapter and the cover, that chapter will be read here uncritically to hopefully help more readers find your work. Another way that you can now be featured on the channel is if you are an unpublished author and you would like your book or story to be critiqued on this channel. If you follow the link in the description below and send a bit to crit this, I will discuss the story and my thoughts on the creation of it and what I know of it in a video that will also be featured on Monday. Because Monday videos I like to keep about community, about you guys, about just anything that's not news or book reviews. So just make it other people focused. And then the third thing is if you would like to check out any of my books, they're available at any of your favorite places to get books, including the local library. And I'm currently working on my newest novel, The Legend of Bill Cassidy, Book 1. It is pretty epic, so when it comes out, probably I'm thinking next year at this point. Honestly, I'm in revision. It's over 200,000 words. It's gonna be a big guy, and I don't want to rush the process. I don't want to. I have been dragging my feet. Okay, I have been really bad this year. Really struggling with focus, but I'm hoping to get back in it. I got 41,000 words in last month, and hopefully I can get another good chunk of it done this month, and we'll be out of revision and into editing and making it very pretty and clipping some stuff down. So making the voice, bringing that voice out. That's editing. Revision is fun. Editing is also fun in a different way, but there's that. Anyway, I don't want to rush the process. There is no requirement to get things out before they're ready, and I don't want to do the book a disservice, and I don't want to do the readers a disservice. Now, it will be ready by the latest next year, but that just gives me extra time to keep on cleaning it and then to give it enough time to like be pre-released for beta readers and stuff. So with that said, that's all of the pre-stuff, and let's get into your guys' creativity. The first story is by Mae Tanner. Wendrill's eyes flew open, her cheek pressed against the door window, and Varden's hand gripped her shoulder. She straightened, turning to face the man. "What time is it?" He pointed out the windshield. "There's a traffic stop ahead." She stared down the road. In the distance, a barricade blocked the road. A white van parked beyond the barrier, and a person leaned against the van, eyes glued to a handheld device. "Can we go around it?" "They've blocked every access road." Varden put the truck in reverse and drove away from the roadblock. Half a mile on, he left the road, stopping in a hidden clearing. He turned the engine off and heaved a sigh. "I'll let them know that we've arrived. Will you be okay staying here with the cargo?" He jerked his thumb toward the back. "I'll be fine." "Good." He exited the truck, then entered the wood. Several minutes passed as Wendrill stared at the place in the forest where Varden had vanished. Drawing deep breaths, she climbed out of the cab, locking it behind her before following the path the man had taken. She refused to sit passively while others acted. She stepped into the clearing, and someone grabbed her from behind, wrapping an arm around her neck. A squeak escaped her. "What do you think you're doing? Why didn't you stay in the truck? You said that you'd be fine there." Varden released her, whirling her around to face him. "I realized that I wasn't okay alone there." "And what about our cargo? We can't risk anyone finding what we're transporting." Wendrill lifted her chin. "The truck's invisible from the road." She dangled the truck's keys. "It'll be safe," he sighed. "Stay close." They hiked for an hour, emerging from the trees near a farmhouse. Varden blocked her with his arm. "Wait." We need to scout for visitors first, he pointed. You go that way. We'll meet on the other side. Watch for a white van like the one that we saw at the roadside. Watch for a white van like the one we saw at the roadblock. What if I see one? Tell me when we meet up on the other side. Wendriel skirted the clearing where the house stood, scanning for a van as she went. She reached the driveway from which she could see the front door and spotted a white van parked in front of the porch. You ain't very stealthy, she whirled. Varden stood behind her, leaning against the trunk of a tree. I do well enough in the city, she gestured toward the house. What do we do now? We wait. I need to contact someone unseen by the van's driver. He pulled her further into the trees. This would be easier if you'd stayed in the truck with our cargo. They retreated deeper into the orchard. Varden settled in a hollow at the foot of the ancient tree. We might as well take a nap while we wait. Wendriel wrapped her arms around herself, gazing up the sky. How long do we wait out here? I can make contact once it's dark. At sunset, Varden served. Time to go. He guided Wendriel to the house, tapped on the window before heading towards the garden. Wendriel huddled on a bench as an hour passed. Something cold touched her nose. She glanced up. It was snowing. She stood and stamped her feet as she glared at Varden. How can you just stand there still in this weather? He laughed and opened his mouth to answer when the gravel on the path crunched. He grabbed her arm and dragged her into the bushes. A woman with shoulder-length hair came into sight, and Varden moved to meet her. The woman grabbed him, and they embraced. He turned. Mum, this is Wendy. She's in charge of our cargo. We need to get it to Sunshine Forest, but there's a roadblock. The woman smiled at Wendriel, her teeth flashing white against her dark skin. Hello, Wendy. My name is Earleth. Well, if that isn't a little bit sussy, I mean, you mentioned a white van fairly early on, and I'm already like, it's a person, ain't it? It's a person, a creature, or a magical item. Which, this has a great chemistry for setting up the suspense and the danger in whatever it is, the packages that they are delivering. And also the introduction of the woman at the end has a strong feeling of, again, danger. So very intriguing. Excellent job. The next story is by Varmintarian. The most miserable line of work I ever suffered was on a planet named Dry Rock. Its sun was a tired red giant. The air outside was lethal, and I learned soon enough that only fools come here willingly. I then discovered that fewer people are allowed to leave willingly. I flew here on a rickety bug bus converted from an old shipping container, whereafter I fell on hard times and ended up working in a recycling warehouse topside. It was next to a shipbreaking yard where underpaid people in space suits break down the middling bits for sorting through, and indoor where I worked was an array of conveyor belts and people whose job, same as mine, was to sift through all of the junk sent our way. Down and out as I was, the facilities seemed to want to remind me. High above the conveyor belts and junk that rode atop them, there was a big cast iron sign with the company's 3-line slogan: Haste makes waste. Waste makes work. Work makes free. This mantra was often parroted by our supervisor, one Mr. Messer. He walked around with a nearly horizontal posture, had a dried up pair of hands that looked like a dead chicken's feet, and an absolutely shriveled scowl half shaded by the brim of his bus driver's cap. He would trot up and down side the disassembly lines, inspecting them with that straight-backed slump, shouting things in a goblin voice like, haste, haste, make haste, and screamed a cat like, now, to stress any other immediacy. We had the dubious honor of listening to this man form actual sentences during the bi-weekly anti-unionization speeches, and the gargled sum of these went something like, they want you to think working 10 hours a day is hard. What's so tough about working 13 hours a day? Work shy. We should be grateful to only have to work 17 hours. Oh, these meager 20 hours our gracious work leaders ask for of us. 24 hours isn't even that long of a shift anyway. You should be asking for overtime. The days on the planet Dry Rock lasted 37 hours and some 40-odd minutes. We were given 4 lunch breaks a day, were expected to use the conveyor belts as dining tables, and to pay for said food, which was altogether the most dry and untasteful food matter to have ever been pressed into the shape of a cube. I would have called it prison-like were it not for my coworker, Walter, who kept saying things like, Man, I hope they send my ass back to jail. They had soy burgers there. He was on not quite parole from the Vertical Internment Center, a prison built inside of the next rock over. That crab bucket, as they called it, had to follow prison labor laws, but our job was, legally speaking, non-prison labor, so fewer rights. At first, he laughed in total disbelief that I was arrived here willingly because, well, most of everybody else here tried to get out of the bucket. Now we're in the air fryer for crawling out. He explained some of the hardware we salvaged goes to the bucket, that they fly cargo buses to Dry Rock loaded with the food like cube matter and other supplies produced in the bucket sweatshop. The buses fly back there with salvaged replacement parts, and that things accidentally go missing by accident, you know? Like people, as he put it, with a nudge and a wink. I do not smoke, so was easily able to save up stacks of the local money for my smuggling out of there. And after paying Walter 20 packs of cigarettes through installments, he tells me, look for a lump of metal with a postcard on it on the conveyor belt. Should be 2 weeks. 3 weeks later, I find a card cut from a cereal box wedged inside of a melted old magnetron. The following was written with a felt-tip pen on its unprinted side. 3,200 hours sharp. Bring this lump. Do not be late. It was 31 hours into the day and the minutes dragged on. Mr. Messer was too busy looking like a dissecant hybrid of potato and chicken to notice the lump was off the conveyor belt. Aside from the warehouse mold-scented life support, the only real form of air conditioning that we had was from the fan tundrel. It was the one thing more restless than Mr. Messer, a motorized stretcher with a box fan that was duct-taped on top of it, constantly doing laps around the disassembly line and orbiting at such an irregular speed that its cooling was at once too brief and too long. Right across from the disassembly were 2 guards in sweat-soaked woolen uniforms, resting their chins on their hands and their hands resting atop their rifle muzzles. Beside each were weathered old posters reading "Wash your hands after handling radium" and "Do not eat paint." And between those guards were the one and only airlock out. They were in no condition to shoot anybody. Not that they needed to. The native air on Dry Rock is such an awful mix of sulfur oxides that will air fry anyone who steps outside without a spacesuit on. 3,200 hours in, another bus full of trash flew overhead, docked with the warehouse airlock started. 3,200 hours in, another bus full of trash flew overhead, docked with the warehouse airlock started cycling. Space-suited people offloaded things from their scrap metal carts, pausing intermittently to give its fan trundle a right of way, and then dumped their trash into the scrap pile. When they were done, all of the workmen retired to their vessels, but for one who looked back and made a beckoning gesture. I figured that was my cue, so I bolted. As soon as our supervisor noticed, he started yelling in as shrill a voice as he could, "Extruder! Extruder! Detain! Detain now!" And the 2 posted guards were so heat-stricken that one of them fell over unconscious and the other tripped over himself. I hurried into the bus. The last thing I remember of Dry Rock was Mr. Messer scampering towards us with the gait of a sandpiper and him crashing face first into the airlock door. Then I fell unconscious. Things got better for me after this. After getting worse later. This is a great introduction to another piece, like possible prologue or a possible part of a chapter 1, though it's only about 1,000 words, so it could very much, 1,000 words could be a chapter 1, so I don't want to pretend that it's that 1,000 words and short chapters aren't a thing, so it could be that, but it is a great introduction, even if it's like maybe a second chapter, because you got the more introduction to who this character is and where he is, but you get a good sense of the world. It does a great job of the planet building and the prison, and just like how terrible this work job is. And of course, we can't get away from Nazi references. But excellent job, excellent piece. The next story is by F. Jeremiah Chamberlain from Battery 28. Sometime into the second hour of the bombardment, Revoyado began to wonder if this wasn't just the normal morning hate like Turbes suggested. He was posted in a shack of about 300 meters away from where the closest shells fell and held his helmet close to his skull. The engineers playing cards next to him held little regard for the bombing, so he tried to keep calm. Even the humans yearning for survival could wear thin in the industrial age of bloodshed. The fury of the Brazilian bombardment throttled the whole of Nueva Sucre. Something from the field guns of howitzer to railway cannons and even blue water dreadnoughts seemed to pound the central riverfront park. At any given second, in any given square kilometer, hundreds if not thousands of shrapnel and high explosive shells ravaged the soil. The forward defense positions were likely erased outright, and everything inland of those trenches had to have been reduced to sand, dirt, splinters, and dust. There were so many shells falling on that part of the city that the sound of each individual one got lost in the cacophony of the others. It sounded less like a bombardment and more like someone was ripping a sheet of cloth without end. It even sounded like rain from time to time as the tremors of war jostled him in peace. The next time Revolledo looked over at the engineers, their apathy had turned to concern. The shack that they were in still ostensibly safe, but the bombardment was so loud and mind-numbing that nothing other than the sea of explosions could be heard. But Revolledo could read lips. In this instance, he quickly regretted the talent. "This isn't right. The Imperials are all up to something," one shouted. "It could be a diversion. They did the same thing in Iranduba," offered another. The next man to speak faced away from Revolledo. What he said was lost in the maelstrom of violence outside, and the others facing him grew a little paler. The next man to speak was difficult to read the lips of, but the one word was clear to Revolledo. Closer. Before his heart could even beat again, a heavy shell peeled the roof of the shack off and filled the building with dust. Revolledo fell to the floor and curled up into a ball. The floorboards seemed to rattle free from their nails and swallowed the young man whole. The bombardment throttled him now, grabbed him by every limb and shaking him until there was nothing solid left. Revolledo had no idea how long this lasted, or even if he was still alive for the next few hours, but the next thing he saw was a medic yanking him up. He was still screaming, but the man slapped him across the face and screamed something at him. Revolledo couldn't tell what he said because his ears were still ringing, but he began to calm down. The medic checked him over and, somehow, finding nothing out of place, tossed him aside. When Revolledo's body had recovered enough to support him on his own 2 feet, he looked around for his rifle. He found it smashed underneath rubble, covered in the same dirt and dust that he was now caked in. It was no matter, though, for there were now hundreds of unattended rifles to pick from. When he extricated himself from the corpse of the shack, whose walls lay in pieces all around, the scene around him was nothing but carnage and terror. Bodies lay in bloody scraps everywhere. He looked, and the ground was pockmarked with tender soil, like a smallpox victim. Not a single building in this suburb stood higher than 2 feet off the ground, which gave way under nearly every footfall. Revolledo fell several times before his legs remembered where they were, smearing another man's insides across him where he landed. He wanted to throw up, but the barrage had already taken the toll. Despite all of the chaos and the aches and the scrapes covering his body, Revolledo fixed on one end that he had, reaching the 317th Jungle Infantry Regiment's headquarters and delivering the set of requests from his battalion. He was surprised that he even remembered the way to the bunker, given how hard it had been rattled around, but was not surprised to see that it now lay in ruins. Everyone inside was dead. The bodies and rubble flowed out of the broken walls of the concrete bunker like liquid from a broken leg. Revolledo stayed a while, nudging the bodies with his torn boots, hoping that one would move. But they all lay still, defeated. He took the satchel off and found that it and its contents had been torn to shreds. He sighed and tossed it into the open-air grave. Mission accomplished. Beyond the walls, other Colombians who were in worse shape than him ran away from the riverfront. He wandered to the felled wall closest to the Amazon, slipping on blood, and peered over the broken concrete. Through the dusty haze, tinged yellow with chlorine gas, boxy figures trudged forward. As his hearing returned to him, he could make out the distinct friendly report of Colombian machine guns clattering nearby. Tracers sliced through the thick clouds, but whatever was moving didn't stop. One of them pierced the nearby vale with the barrel of a gun. A metal body followed, to which were attached 2-footed wheels. The gun went off before Revolledo could even tell what he was looking at, and an artillery shell screamed past him. A storm of .405 Brazilian rifle crashed against what remained of the commanding bunker. He screamed obscenities and gibberish as he fell to the gory floor, cradling his rifle until the Hell Machine's gaze was cast elsewhere. Revolledo took one last look at the commanding staff of their 317th Jungle Infantry, and one last listen to the approaching death that faced him. He did his duty. Now, it was time to run. Not everyone can write war scenes like this, especially that don't get repetitive, that keep the tension going, that beautifully paint the picture without being overly nasty, for lack of better ways of saying. I recognize this from previous entries, and I get that what he is delivering is the news to his battalion. So excellent job. Interesting interpretation of the prompt. The next story is by KawaiiGroovycat. Welcome back. I feel like it's been a while, but I keep saying that in general because I've been off for a couple of weeks, so everything feels like it's been a while. Leigh knew better than to ask questions. That was the first rule at Illumin Imports and Logistics, and she followed it with the same blind obedience she applied to washing her hands after shredding papers or wiping down blood off leather seats or using her power. But one day, her boss, Virginia, waited quietly at her desk holding a small package wrapped in brown paper. She typically started Leigh's day with a request to adjust someone's memories, to make witnesses forget inconvenient details, or help clients erase traumatic experiences. The work made her sick, but her handler had made it clear that she had no choice. Simple delivery today, Leigh. Virginia's voice carried an edge that she'd never heard before. Vincent Torino. The address is on the label. No questions, no detours. Got it? Leigh nodded, her trembling hands gripping the package. It felt wrong in her hands. It was too heavy for being such a small box, and when she moved, something inside of it seemed to shift. Part of Leigh wanted to ask what was inside, but the look in Virginia's eyes stopped. Instead, she headed back into the winter fog. Walking through the city's winding streets, Leigh fought the urge Walking through the city's winding streets, Leigh fought the familiar urge to peek inside the packages she carried. 7 years of this work had taught her that her curiosity would only lead her to more self-loathing and regret, and the package seemed to grow heavier with each step, and she became convinced that something sticky was moving inside. But the look in Virginia's eyes stopped her. Instead, she headed back into the winter fog. Walking through the city's winding streets, Leigh fought the familiar urge to peek inside the packages she carried. 7 years of this work had taught her that curiosity would only lead to more self-loathing and regret. But this package seemed to grow heavier with each step, and she became convinced that something sticky was moving inside. The squelching noise the package made told her as much. The address led her to an upscale restaurant with dark windows and a closed sign. When she knocked, a man in an expensive suit answered. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe 40, with kind eyes that seemed at odds with the reputation of a gang boss. You were sent by Virginia? Vincent Torino's hands shook as he took the package from her. Yes, sir. Leigh replied. He invited her inside, leading her to the bar where he set the package down carefully. The restaurant felt hollow, chairs stacked on tables like sentinels in the dim light filtering through the dirty windows. Vincent opened the package slowly, and Leigh caught a glimpse of something pale and bloody before he quickly closed the box again. She expected him to show some anger or shock, or even to threaten her. Really, anything would have been less of a surprise to her than the profound relief that washed over his face. Thank you, he said quietly, almost emotional. Tell your boss the message was received loud and clear. And tell her, I understand about the girl. Leigh nodded, though her mind was clouded with confusion. She delivered threats before, from time to time, usually in the form of photos, documents, or even weapons. She was pretty sure, in hindsight, that Virginia had literally made her hand deliver anthrax once. But never in all of her years of working for Virginia had a recipient thanked her with such a genuine gratitude. Walking back through the fog, the pieces began falling into place with sickening clarity. The weight, the shifting contents, the brief, bloody flash when Vincent opened the box, his relief. Leigh knew what was in that package now. It had been a severed hand. Not just a threat, but proof. Proof that someone had been eliminated for whatever reason. Maybe because of a grudge, or because that person knew too much, or maybe it was simply to send a message. But Vincent's final words haunted her most of all. The girl. Leigh didn't ask questions. She didn't understand anything, and she was starting to understand that she was the only one who didn't. All Leigh knew was that the hand wasn't the entire message. Somehow, the message started and ended with her. Excellent excellent introduction to this character, to this scenario, to this job that she's doing, and that she's got a history of this job, and how sketchy Virginia is. Beautiful. Your pieces always have such an attitude to them too, Cat. The next story is by Egao Chan, called Pizza and Fear. Red hat, red uniform, and a red moped with a red box and a metal rack attached to its back. Wu Xiaoming was in a full food delivery uniform issued by the platform. In his hands were 2 pizza boxes stacked together, 1 pepperoni extra meat and 1 Hawaiian extra pineapple. Everything was still fuzzy, like how he got here, who ordered the pizza, and why only the house in front of him was clear of the thick fog all over other places. But one thing he was sure of was that he needed to deliver these 2 pizzas. He knocked on the door. No one answered. He knocked again. Still no one answered. After a short consideration, he decided to knock one more time. If still no one answered, then he would leave the pizzas by the doorstep. Just when Wu Xiaoming was about to put the pizzas down, the door opened by a crack. Behind it was a gray, sweaty man with bloodshot eyes. He was impatient and almost growled his question. What? Pizza delivery, 1 pepperoni with extra meat and 1 Hawaiian with extra pineapple? Wu Xiaoming raised the pizza boxes. The man looked relieved and a little upset at the same time. Just put it down. Wu Xiaoming did as asked, turned around and left. Everything went dark for a moment. Then, in but a few seconds, he was back by his moped with 2 pizzas in hand, same position, same orders, same house. The questions of how he got there and why he was supposed to deliver the pizzas began gnawing at him. He must have forgotten something important. The door opened after 3 knocks. The same man, same look, and same impatient question. What? Pizza delivery. Wu Xiaoming raised the boxes at the man's eyes, while trying his best to peep through the crack of the door. A TV remote was on the ground, along with the same broken glass shards. Put it on the ground and get out of here! The man barked and slammed the door in Wu Xiaoming's face. Wu Xiaoming frowned, then put the pizzas down. Something's off. Should he try knocking again? He was back by the moped with the pizzas after hesitating too long at the front door. Something needed to be done here, Wu Xiaoming concluded as he approached the door. Memories crept back into his mind. He was only here to check the empty house out, and he was definitely not a pizza delivery man. Knocking on the door once again, this time, he stood closer to where the door would open so that he could see through the crack more clearly. What? The man answered the door with the same tone. In the living room, beside the TV remote, was a toppled and almost completely shattered glass coffee table. A splash of red was dripping from one of its broken edges. Pizza! Wu Xiaoming put his boxes down and paced towards his moped, searching for his phone in the process. He found it, but wouldn't turn on. It was dead as a brick. Everything reset once again, and this time, there was a noticeable difference in his surroundings from the last time. The fog that had clouded everything around the house had closed in. Even a part of the moped was now inside of the fog. Yet, unfortunately for himself, he wondered more about himself. Luckily, it seemed like he was more than physically capable of dealing with a simple wooden door and most human threat. And he actually knew a few spells, actually Taoist and Buddhist spells, that could be useful in various situations. Pizza! Open up! This time, Wu Xiaoming decided to just go for it. What? Bang! The man did not even finish his impatient question before the door was kicked in and bashed him in the face. He fell backward and rolled on the ground as Wu Xiaoming charged into the door. His gun flew off and slid under the TV. A family of 4, 2 parents and 2 children, were tied to chairs with ropes and tapes. The first man's accomplice was sitting in a chair watching them. His head was covered in seeping red bandages. The family put up a fight, just not enough. The second man was still in shock when the boxes of pizza were thrown into his face. A powerful kick on the chest followed, sending him into the corner of the kitchen and ridding him of his gun. Wu Xiaoming picked up the gun and pointed it at the first man, warning him not to try for his gun under the TV. Back off! Hands above your heads! Under his spare left hand, Wu Xiaoming ripped off a tape binding the father to his chair. He was bloodied, but he looked ready to break free and help his family. Both men on the ground let out an inhuman screech at the same time. Their bodies stretched, blackened, and turned into streams of smoke. In but a few breaths' time, they merged into the air, forming a cartoonish-looking smoke monster's face. Its mouth opened wide, revealing a crooked fangs. That moment, its jaw clamped down at Wu Xiaoming. The concentrated ray of golden light cut through the smoke monster's face like a hot knife through butter. The face exploded into countless sparks. An incoming shockwave blasted everyone backwards. Wu Xiaoming fell on the concrete ground outside of the house, now run down with a for sale sign dangling from the rusty doorknob. The dark clouds looming over the house had diminished, but not extinguished yet. There were probably ways to forcibly annihilate the cloud and thus exorcise the entire property, but for now, the best option would be to find the pizza delivery guy who failed to recognize the situation and was said to have been in and out of rehab for years over it. I really like the direction of this, and I can see it, I could see it very well going along with the girl who was like imagining things when their house was attacked by robbers, and so then she had the power to change things via her imagination. And I really like this very casual, like, mysticism going on with your stories, that it could so easily be a collection of stories that kind of follow people that, or a person that goes through these experiences or follows these experiences and catalogs these experiences. It's a very interesting, compelling idea. And they're just like, I don't want to say like simple stories, but they're just like stories that you could hear somebody tell you and then just like wives' tales, but not exactly a wives' tales. You know, is that making any sense? The last story is by M.K. McKeever. Eddie ducked out of the way of an oncoming street vendor pushing a hammered copper barrel, the strong, rich smell of coffee filling his nose at the same time that a cold wind broke through his coat, tempting him to flag the man down for a cup. Unfortunately, he hadn't as much as a rational stamp to his name, and Mr. Nippus had been very clear that he wasn't to dawdle. According to him, Lord Strange had struck some deal with the city concierge, and the package was going to seal it. Wrapping his hands tighter around the strap of his leather messenger bag, before looking both ways as two gleaming hover carriages passed. If he could make the 12 o'clock hover trolley, he could make it to the concierge's estate. His stomach tightened with anxiety at the thought of it. Mr. Nippus had never sent him on such an important assignment, or such a high-risk one. Did security know he was coming? What if they didn't believe him and turned him away? Or worse, arrested him? Just thinking about going to the dank, moldy cells of Alara prison made him wish that his older siblings were there. He always felt braver with Crash by his side. He was so absorbed in his own lamentations that he nearly missed the light until he realized that people who had gathered at the crosswalk were going across. Rushing to get across, he nearly bumped into a woman with slight wrinkles on around her eyes, a gray in her auburn hair, and body draped in gray fur and carmine scale wrap. "Hey!" the woman snapped at him. "Sorry, ma'am." Eddie apologized quickly, hurrying to get out of her way, but not before hearing her mumbling about the days when they used to lock away filthy, useless urchins. Eddie had to bite back his protests. That he wasn't an urchin, that he had parents, a brother and a sister, and a whole slew of cousins back in New Peoria, that it wasn't his fault Nippus took him as collateral on their debts. But then the lady would just label his family shiftless, with no desire to better themselves. People in the city thought they knew everything when they knew nothing at all. He made it to the trolley station, a gray and blue building of metal and stucco, all edges and Art Deco stenciling, leading to an open terminal with dozens of hover trolleys that went everywhere in the city, some of them out of the city into the surrounding cities and towns. Maybe he could take one of those instead. Maybe he could be out of the city before Mr. Nippus knew that he was gone. Maybe he could make it back home. And then what? A voice that sounded surprisingly like his sister's echoed in his mind. Eventually, Mr. Nippus would figure out that he was gone, and he would tear the city apart to find Eddie if he had to. And if he had to inform Lord Strange that he lost a courier, and he would be lucky if all he got was a thrashing when they found him, or they might just take his brother or sister in his place. He had seen some of Lord Strange's other businesses, at least the ones in the city. The candy store manager who kept his stock boy locked in a closet at night. What if he sent Crash there? For the manager to mistreat and abuse. The women uptown who had their marriages brokered at the bride school. Would they lock Ellie away, teaching her to be prim and proper for a man old enough to be their dad? Thought chased all notions of escape from his mind. Resigned to his fate, he walked up to the booth where a familiar haggard-looking man waited. Pulling out his trolley pass, Eddie said, "1 ticket to Bristle Path, please." I want to know what happens next. I am invested in Eddie's story here, in what is going on with his family, and who Mr. Nippus is, and what this package is that he's had to deliver, like what else he's had to do against his will. I want to know. Excellent work here, McKeever. excellent. It was such a short piece, but I am so invested in wanting to know what happens next. So, those are the pieces for this month. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are. Which were your favorites? Which do you want to know more about? Maybe all of them, like me. With that said, have a great weekend. Happy August. I can't believe it's already August. And don't die.
Was that Wayland Cross in the trunk? Do you know, or is that something that's still being figured out?
The person in the trunk was not Wayland Cross.
Is he in trouble?
We don't know who did it, but as the owner of the car, the longer he's missing, the worse it looks for him.
Cross isn't a killer. For the last couple of years, the average number of murders in Baltimore has been over 300, and it's been going up. Mind you, that's only whatever the badges count as official murder, and believe me, there are people that don't count when they die. Wayland? If you're down here, tell me. I'm not talking to the badges, I've been looking for you. They found a body in your trunk. Way. Why? Did you do that? To the left. Plain black letters read along the wall. You walked in the corridor. Once that ends, you chose the dark is on the right. My vision goes blurry, flickers black and black and black for longer intervals until I can't see anything at all. I'm not screaming anymore, but my voice echoes back to me. Where the hell am I? You're dead, Josephine. Even smart people do stupid shit sometimes, right?